Alrighty, welcome inside the Glory Road podcast. Billy Beebe back with you hosting. Remember to subscribe on YouTube and always give us a follow. All my NBA stuff will be on Spotify, and then all my NBA and NFL stuff will be on YouTube under Billy Beebe. So we appreciate you all tuning in. We are here today with Matthew Beck.
Appreciate you having me back. Been probably a year or so?
It's been almost exactly a year, which I was just doing what somebody who's trying to grow in the industry is doing. I'm re-listening to my pods. I'm re-listening to my stuff. A year ago, at this time, Matthew and I sat down and we did a podcast which we entitled Rocket Men. 3 players that had been on the Rockets that were all changing homes. So we go over Chris Paul, Carmelo Anthony, and Dwight Howard. 2009 loves all these guys. But Matthew and I just wanted to take the opportunity to almost do a reminder that these guys, we did really what they'd done and some big moments they'd been a part of, Matthew, but I think the changing of teams, especially Dwight, who is on team number 6 or 7, we wanted to take the chance to remind people that not only how great of a career they'd had, the big moments they'd had, but whatever situation they were going to walk into, we still believe they could benefit.
Had to be the right spot.
Exactly. And ironically, I think all these guys are in a good spot and a spot where they can all benefit greatly and have benefited greatly, as we're a week and a half away from the NBA bubble. So we're going to take a look at these 3 guys again, and then we're going to take a look at their teams, quick breakdowns of their teams and where their teams stand. Matthew, let's start with the point god, Chris Paul, who last summer we kind of claimed to be a little bit of a dickhead, as he was part of
big dickhead.
He was, and he was on his second breakup with James Harden after Blake Griffin, so both had not gone well. Both claimed the same thing. Chris Paul-wise, I heard Jackie McMillan talk about it recently. She compared Rudy Gobert and Chris Paul. It's like, hey, you're probably always right. You're a smart guy. You understand the game. You're probably always right, but it doesn't mean you have to say it all the time, right? So I think Blake, James Harden, I think they just got tired of the whole, they don't want to be led all the time, every game, especially when they're coming in to their own. So that was a key factor in their breakup. The Thunder are ridiculous. After beginning 6-12, I believe the stat is they're 31-16. So, after starting below 500, they pick it up, they get it going. Before we get to Chris Paul's stats, for the team, Matthew, I'd say the most shocking stat for the OKC Thunder, 3 players averaging 19 a game scoring-wise, which, as a Cavs fan right now, I treasure that greatly, to have 3.
The diversity.
Yeah, just high scores in 3 different places. So Danilo Gallinari, believe it or not, is averaging 19. Dennis Schroeder off the bench, a quiet 6th Man of the Year candidate, he's getting 19 a game. And then Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who is the future for that team, he's getting 19. We left Chris Paul out, but Matthew, break down Chris, who has had a comeback season to say the least.
I don't want to say it's all Chris Paul's doing, but if you watch enough film, you can see that pick and roll action just completely breaks down the defense, and it's just giving all those guys just beautiful shots.
Right.
And you can see that in Chris Paul's passing. The defense gets scared. We were literally just watching film, and you can just tell they're like, all right, when is he going to pass it? Where's he going to pass it to?
Well, playing-wise, we look at his stop and start. That's number 1. You talk about pick and roll, and I mentioned it. Steven Adams was never doing pick and roll with Russ because Russ
sitting
can't
in the
shoot.
paint waiting for a shot to hit the rim. That's all he was doing.
And then he has Nerlens Noel, too, who's a little more athletic than Steven Adams, a little faster. So that kind of pick and roll is impressive. And it's led to an uptick in numbers, uptick in wins for the Thunder. They might even be better than the Rockets were last year.
Honestly. I mean, they play way better as a team, as a whole. And there's just crazy stats out there. I'll just throw one out real quick. Chris Paul, top 4 in PER for point guards. That is insane. I mean, the dude's playing a really good amount of minutes. He's missed maybe 1 game or something, was it?
Yeah.
I mean, the dude's playing pretty much every game.
However, he is well known for not being ready for the playoffs. That's where he always gets hurt. True. But still,
in terms of regular season, the guy is just having an amazing season. Thunder, 5th seed. In the Western Conference, by the way.
40-24.
Yeah. In the loaded Western Conference, they're the 5th seed. And it is just, again, I'm not saying it's all Chris Paul's doing, but that guy, he leads the team. He's the leader of that team.
Right.
Just absolutely having really, really solid numbers, and you're seeing it in his play. So
17.7 a game. And then he's still doing a little bit of rebounding, 4.9 in his classic, almost 7 assists.
Down a little bit than normal, but 7 assists is still, really, really solid. So
yeah, and I think he doesn't. With James, I just think he deferred to James Harden. He just thought somehow I have to find James, and I think with these other guys, it's just. I don't think him and Schroeder obviously aren't on the floor much together, but Danilo and Shea, and man, if he wanted to mentor somebody, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander is probably perfect in this situation. And I think the perfect situation, if you want to check out the Thunder, you can go back and look at their last game, a 105-104 win at Boston, and Chris Paul had multiple steals in the end of the game, multiple big plays. He really is just putting in the work. The consistency is huge for that team.
He's
and
great on both ends. 6th in total steals this season.
His
really
on-ball
impressive.
defense is ridiculous.
Oh my gosh, I honestly wasn't paying a whole lot of attention to Chris Paul until Billy texted me a couple of days ago, and I started looking at some highlights and some stats from this year, and it is really impressive. Honestly, this dude's 34.
Yeah.
If I believe, and just having an absolute underrated monster season. I feel like nobody's talking about him, but if you look, I mean, the dude is 10th in total offensive win shares, which is 3rd among point guards, and that is just ridiculous.
He's re-cemented himself. Great points there. He's re-cemented himself, and we did a podcast again. You can go back on the Glory Road podcast on Spotify, just how we looked at the Rocket Men. I think we had a little bit of a worry, Matthew, that he just wasn't interested in the Thunder, and
that Mike D'Antoni offense, it was definitely not for him.
Right, and he still had solid numbers. He still scored, and I think he reminded people of the shot he had. They never would have traded for him if they didn't think he had a really good shot going. And
I mean, I can't believe I don't know this, but wasn't it the Chris Paul Harden Rockets that went 7 with the Warriors?
Yep.
And Chris Paul was out.
He was
unfortunately, Game 7. Who knows what would have happened? But they gave him a run for their money while he was playing. So
and he has this wild intertwining right now because the Clippers, in their best year, he pulls his hammy again, and they blow a lead to the Rockets, which is ironic.
Some bad juju.
Exactly. And then the hamstring again when they go 7, and then I just don't think anybody had quite the confidence last year, and they go 6 with the Warriors. Just can't quite get there. If we're mentioning kind of gearing towards the Thunder overall right now, I gotta give Sam Presti as much credit as I can, right?
Everybody thought it was going to be a big rebuild, and they're
completely
upper seed
in
the Western Conference.
And they're 5 in the West, which is really a 2 in the East.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, Russell, I don't think Russell wanted out. He might have. Paul George went first. So, Paul George demands a trade because his buddy Kawhi finally says, hey, we could get together. I don't think you get more than what he got from the Clippers. Really. He got Shea, he got Danilo, and he got... I want to say 3, could be 2 first-rounders, a ridiculous get for Paul George. And then, obviously, just kind of how things fall, Russell wants out, which isn't surprising because, I don't think they'll talk about it much, but he had to have been a little hurt by just Paul's turn.
Yeah,
and the way
I feel like it was mutual with OKC, by the way. Yeah. I mean, you've had the guy, you've tried with
for Russell. I don't know
studs.
about Paul George. I don't know.
I'm saying for OKC. For OKC as an organization, I feel like it was probably somewhat mutual with parting with Russell Westbrook because, I mean, you've had the guy with studs, you've had him by himself, you've had the whole combination of trying to figure out what works, and clearly, I mean, they were a great regular season team, but they never really did anything besides the one finals run to the finals. They really never did much in the playoffs, so I think it was definitely time to experiment elsewhere, I would say, for OKC.
Paul George got to a MVP level and hurt his shoulder. I think that was really killer, and I just think, I always use this excuse with the Indians. It's like you only get so many tries at it, and after that, it's like, hey, it's just not going to work. We got to mix it up. Again, I think Shea is going to be special. I'm really jealous of the Clippers and now Thunder for getting him because the Cavaliers took Sexton over him, which I'm a Sexton guy, whatever, but Shea really good on both ends of the ball and passing wise. The Thunder are 5 seed right now. That kind of pins them up again. I believe it's Denver that they would play.
I think so. I think so. We can probably check that.
That's a tough matchup for them, and I think either way, the West is tough overall. But the key is, Matthew, and I hate to say this with the way we just talked up these guys, they would play the Jazz. So
that'd be a really good matchup.
Yeah, and then it's either Jazz or Nuggets. Nuggets only have one game over the Jazz, but I don't think Sam Presti, who is a very smart general manager. The
best.
only bad move he's ever made is the Harden trade. I don't think he's interested in keeping this team together.
Yeah, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I mean, you look at it, no matter how good Chris Paul is doing, I have a bunch of stats here. He's doing fantastic, but no matter how good he's doing, you know you got tops 3-4 more years of this kind of play, and then what?
Right.
Then you got a contract that's worth $40 million on some guy that's having a hamstring problem or a knee problem or something. It's definitely doesn't make sense. Maybe one more year they would kind of see or keep it. I'm not sure what Chris Paul's contract is, unfortunately, but
he's still at. So we talked about this last year.
Yeah.
He's at 43 this year, and he only goes up. So it's 45
exactly.
next year,
Yeah.
48 the year after that. So
they got to try to get rid of him. I mean, somewhere, some team is probably like, yeah, we'll take him. I would imagine. I'm sure the Knicks would make some dumb move.
Yeah, the Knicks are interested. For the Thunder, the problem is this is their upside. So completely, this is the peak. A 5 seed with a 31-16 record as of late. Danilo at his peak. I think maybe Shea gets better, but Shea's not a big time scorer.
I don't know if he's a team leader. He might just be like a lesser, maybe an example is maybe like a lesser Kyrie, where he's a really nice guy to have and he's going to get you points, but is he going to lead your team to a championship or probably not.
Yeah,
we'll have to see, but I'm not taking any bets on that.
I'd put him his peak. I think he's kind of Darren Williams-ish, where he's gonna have a nice 19 and probably 7. And then I think even more that's gonna collide with Chris.
Yeah,
where one of them's gonna want to completely be the starter running it. Yeah. Not that personality-wise they'd clash, but Danilo's gonna want the bag. He'll be gone at the end of the year, and then I think Schroeder has 1 year. But either way, I don't think Sam Presti looks at this team and really thinks. This is something we're going to go after for 4 more years. So I'd look for Chris Paul to change teams. Miami, I still think if he's willing to take a buyout, he can go to LA. He can go to a couple other places. He is a big contract, though, and I think for a guy in his career, and again, he proved it, he's going to want to keep where he is, just doing what he can. So Chris Paul, a lot of great stats there. The Thunder, the 5th seed at 40-24, really, really good. And again, if you want to check out where Chris Paul is at, if you want to check out where the Thunder are at, I would look up the last game they played, a 105-104 in Boston. Big win for them. So that'll wrap up our first Rocket Man, Chris Paul. Let's go to our second guy, who is on one of the bigger teams within the bubble. I think it's
probably the biggest.
It's ironic, number one, Matthew, that all these guys were on the Rockets. I think it's more ironic that after we went through everything, they're in the bubble.
Yeah.
How did all of them? I mean, we'll get to Carmelo, who I don't know how.
We're gonna have an interesting talk about Melo, but leading into Dwight, I mean, this guy, I was, when Billy told me, and I always do my research before a podcast, I want to make sure I know what I'm talking about, and I was thinking Dwight Howard is maybe going to have, 5 boards, maybe 10 points or so. This dude is, like, top in efficiency in, like, everything. I mean, playing good defense, 20th in total blocks, which is really impressive. 19th in blocks per game. So he's getting really good defensive stats. He's out there playing hard for the Lakers. I mean, we know that they kind of are a little bit less deep this year, obviously with the Anthony Davis trade, and I think Dwight Howard being on the team was just a really, really great addition, just to kind of make the roster a little bit more well-rounded.
So we'll start with I did not ever think this could happen. Number one, I think LeBron is always salty with guys that have beat him.
Yeah.
I think he doesn't like Paul Pierce. I don't think he likes Dwight Howard. And I think we talked about it in last year's pod. Again, it's a great listen to go back and look at where these guys stood last summer compared to now. I think there was beef. I've heard it everywhere. You really can find this and look at it. 2008, Howard goes to the Olympics with Chris Paul, Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh, Darren Williams, like that kind of crew.
Yeah. The Redeem team, right?
Yeah. Yep, that would have been the Redeem team. And they win it. Obviously, they have a great time. Kobe's on that team. And then 12, they apparently went out of their way to make sure Dwight Howard was not on the team. Not one of the guys, didn't fit in.
Yeah.
He's had his own career issues. He gets into it with Kobe eventually.
12 was about the Lakers, wasn't it? That was about, right?
Yeah, I think he still would have been on the Lakers.
So 11 to 12 he was on Orlando, and then 12 to 13 he was on the Lakers. So yeah, there was a whole bunch of beef with Nash, Dwight, and Kobe, right? During that whole time, there was a bunch of beef. So
I just don't think anybody was taking to him. I was kind of shocked LeBron wanted to bring him in, but
yeah.
The numbers you read, the stuff you talked about, and the way if you watch the Lakers, the way you've seen him, it's just a guy that's making the most of his minutes.
Yeah,
It's not a guy that, and it's everything you'd want from Dwight, who we previewed his 09 campaign in the playoffs, in which he dominated and really gave LeBron all he could, both offensively and defensively.
Those were great series. As a young Cavs fan, those were I'll never forget that LeBron shot. I know we're not talking about LeBron, but
if you go back and watch it, and it's just a team built for Dwight, right? They pass to the outsides, he rebounds, he tries to push the inside and kick it out. So really great and a great season for him to go to the finals. He takes one game versus the Lakers, but since then, the Lakers, Houston, Atlanta, Charlotte, Washington, everywhere. And finally he lands.
He's at a worldwide tour, pretty much. I mean, but real quick, I know you're gonna say finally he does land in LA. Great spot for him. This dude is a couple rolls and a couple bounces from a double-double. I mean, in 16 minutes a game, which is honestly really impressive. I mean, if he was having 24 and we're like, okay, he's got 7.5 points a game and about 7.5 rebounds. If he was having 20-something minutes, I'd be like, okay, come on, pick it up. But on 16 minutes a game, that's really impressive.
And maybe that speaks most to your roll and a bounce that maybe he's not pushing for it. Maybe he's just
potentially
where you fit. You play great defense, you're huge, and there's going to be some matchups. Again, I think there's going to be some matchups for these guys where, when they play the Jazz and they play maybe the Clippers, more likely the Thunder. But in the West, when you get the Clippers when they play Montrez, Houston, teams like that, Dwight doesn't fit. He's not even the starter on the Lakers, we should add, let alone when they get into a series, that they're playing small ball. He's not going to fit. But it's just the same. Hey, if it's end of game and the Lakers want to run their best rebounder and their toughest guy and their biggest guy to cause some trouble and give up no buckets and really cause a fit for, Harrell, who's been going at you all game, or really make sure Rob Covington does not drive, something like that. Dwight's going to fit perfectly. He's done really well. I wasn't sure he'd get this last shot. I thought Washington was a mess. He was hurt.
Yeah, and there's a lot of off-court drama, too, if I'm not mistaken.
He had his personal issues that you can look up on your own time. And here he is. He's back in the bubble. You can tell he fits. I don't think he's not LeBron's friend. He's not anybody's, big-time friend. But, he's just fitting in, playing well. He has a role there. And again, I think it's just really exciting. In a certain way, this podcast is a nice in-your-face. We were right.
Yeah, kind of.
These guys have value. They all did. They were great ones. And Chris Paul and I think Melo has okay enough numbers to remind people they are still. And then Dwight just fits perfectly. We don't got to dive in much to the Lakers.
One crazy stat, by the way, Dwight's shooting 60% from three, just to let everybody know that.
He takes them.
But, 73% field goal shooting. Really impressive. 5th in true shooting percentage and 5th in offensive rebound percentage. Just having a great year. Like we were just saying, just super, super efficient. Comes on, as Bill Belichick once said, do your job. That's all he does. He comes on and does his job, and just that's all they need. There's not much else they need from him. So
yeah, again, he's the backup center on the Lakers, who are in a weird spot because they want Anthony Davis to play center, but Anthony Davis doesn't want to. Rightfully so.
He likes bullying power forward.
That's how he's the biggest power forward. At times he's the fastest one. I had somebody arguing that he's way better on defense than LeBron. It's like, power forwards.
If you're 6'11",
there's he's the best power forward. There's almost no power forwards that can even touch the perimeter that great.
Yeah,
and if they do, he's way bigger.
On what you call Giannis. I know some people call him small forward, power forward.
I think that's the biggest key is when they hit the Bucks. What's really going to happen?
Yeah.
But
I would like to think, obviously, me and you are both LeBron fans. If it came down to Lakers Bucks, I would be rooting for the Lakers, but I think AD would play Giannis really, really well. And I would hope. It would make sense. About the same height, probably the same quickness. We know Giannis has trouble shooting, so AD can probably, give him some space. Yeah, exactly.
So Lakers, the 1 seed in the West, either way, it looks like they're going to have a really exciting first round.
Yeah.
I would save it for another pod, but I'm all for the Grizzlies, who have certainly earned that spot. And then Zion's Pelicans will try and bust in. But to our last Rocket Man, our most interesting guy, the one we kind of have some love for.
We both have a soft spot in our hearts for Melo.
Carmelo Anthony, who was with the Rockets, again, we said this in the first podcast, he's a Rocketman for 10 days. First off, if you want to get where he was at, I'd just say go back and watch the First Take interview that he did, which I commended him for. I liked it. I thought he was smart. He was intelligent. He revealed some things about the Rockets that didn't make sense. And then it was crazy to think he went 10 days with the Rockets, got cut, and then nobody picked him up for the rest of the year. It was crazy that we went, I want to say 4 weeks into the season, and he still was not on a team this year. And I'm thinking, because you might remember he was at Dwayne Wade's last retirement game, and then he went to a Knicks game. Like, he was like a former Knicks celeb, and it's like, is this dude in the league?
Yeah.
Like, what is going on? So he missed the first 12 or 15 games this year, and that's where we kind of started like, is Carmelo done? Is that, like, is my last memory of this guy going to be a Wednesday night in Houston that we never saw him again? I published a story for umudynamo.com talking about 5 teams I thought really he would have fit well. This was at the end of last summer. Ironically, Matthew, I like all these teams still for him.
They still make sense.
And he's another guy that is going to hit free agency again, I think, and we'll go over his numbers. You'll give them to me in a sec, but he's earned the chance again to hit free agency, find a good situation, and figure that out. So, ironically, Portland was number 3. So I'll go through the top 5 first. I wrote the Nuggets. So they had kind of just hit a nice level. They were trying to push, but Portland beat them. They didn't have that extra leg, that extra score that guy could go off.
That nostalgia thing too,
Right, and he returns. He mixed things up. He could give him a nice 30-point playoff game. They're not getting that all the time. Miami, I thought would have been fun.
Really good spot, Miami.
I still think would. Yeah.
When you think Miami, you don't think they have scorers. I know. I mean, Jimmy Butler's great. I know Hero's been doing really, really good for them.
Yeah.
But when I think the Miami Heat, I think toughness, defense, and I think bringing in Melo would just create another of like the two
wing
threats.
shooter. Yeah, right.
Another threat to have that it's like, okay, hey, we got to play defense on this guy.
And then I wrote Portland. So I wrote Portland's just like Denver, man. They hit their peak. And they went to the Western Conference Finals, and they beat Russ, and they beat the Nuggets, and it was like, this is great, but that's it.
Yeah.
Like, what's your extra step? I thought Melo was their extra step. They have great scores, and they could hope for a lot, but...
I don't want to disrespect Jokic, but I don't think anybody in the West is like, oh, no, we got to play Jokic.
Right.
Great player, really great player. He's like a point center. It's really, really pretty unique, but again, just reiterating, I don't fear him. I don't think anybody else really does.
So I wrote Indiana because they were losing Bogdanovich at the time. I thought he really would have placed Bogdanovich well, and I same thing. I think they're going through a transition period. They just paid Brogdon, so they're on the books for Depot, Brogdon, Turner, and Sabonis, which are all huge contracts. I think Sabonis is coming up too, and it's like, hey man, how can you just get a cheap option that might be an upside? That's Carmelo for sure. And then the Nets. Think how fun it'd be for the Nets to be going into the bubble with Melo right now. Like, just how they've lost everyone. Kyrie, I know, looks up to him in a way. Just, he would have been a nice come-home story for him.
Yeah.
He could have maybe called it more of a retirement. But, again, I think all these guys are options. Portland took a different turn. They lost Nurkic and Zach Collins, who were going to be big for them at the center position.
Hassan Whiteside's done a great job, by the way.
Whiteside's done very well.
Reignited his career there.
But they started slow. They picked up a little bit. They are 8 games back, so they'll have a chance. They need to get within 4.
Yeah, they were the 9th seed
for the final spot. So if they get within 4 games, they'll get a mini playoff to get that 8th spot. But it's going to be very tough. Yeah. Matthew, numbers wise, tell me how Carmelo's fit.
Not exactly efficient, but he's put up 15 points a game. So I mean, that's, I would say, middle of the road, upper. Like kind of around there. Like, I wouldn't say your average guy is scoring 16 points.
Right.
But, Melo's doing good there. He's getting 6 rebounds. If you have him at power forward, that's probably going to go 7 maybe. If you have him at small forward, maybe 5, just because of positioning on the floor.
Right.
Shooting okay field goal percentage, 42%. It's not great. It's not terrible. What was surprising to me was he's almost at 40% from 3. 37%, which is, that's the league now. You need to be able to shoot. And if Melo can just sit there in the corner and, maybe every once in a while do some ISO, that's really what a team needs, and that's what he's doing. So,
We'll leave it at that. He's a cheap option with a veteran minimum.
Yeah.
He's played well enough to fit in as a starter.
Mm-hmm.
He's done well enough that the teams trust him. But I just think the fit is within the players community and within the NBA community. People are they breathe a sigh of relief that this is where he is.
Yeah.
That he's playing, he's on a competitive team, he's shooting well, he's had one or two big games. Like, it's just Carmelo's in the league and you love it. And that's it. That's all it is. It's like it wasn't you didn't feel like it was time for Carmelo to exit. I don't think anyone thought that. Wade, it had a premature feeling to it, a nice send away, but Carmelo, it's like it couldn't have gone like that, number one. And number two, you just knew he had tank and a gas left in the tank to make a difference for this team. And just watching Dame's birthday the other day from the bubble, it just seems like he's just a good veteran leader. I think people like seeing him. They like knowing he's on a competitive team, and I think that's where he fits more than what I wrote is like, hey, Portland needs that extra. It's like, hey man, Melo's in the league. Yeah. Nobody's upset about it. Nobody's calling him trash anymore. And then
he's happy, obviously.
And he's happy to be playing. And again, I think he has a ton of great options this summer that he's proven I can still compete. And he was right in that first take interview. There were so many names that it was like, how is this guy in the league over Melo? This is ridiculous.
Very, very true. I think like we were just kind of saying, just to reiterate, like being on a team where he doesn't have to dominate the ball every single time up the court is a perfect spot. So if you were going to say, oh, Melo is going to go to like the Bulls, like I would feel like they're going to try to pass him the ball and then he's just going to look terrible. But on Portland, where they got Dame, they got CJ McCollum, they even have Hassan Whiteside, he can just kind of get his points when it comes to him, let the defense, take what the defense is giving him and just really look like a just solid overall, player, like which he is. He's still a really great player, as we're saying here. I mean, 16 points a game, you're not going to complain about that.
I think he still had some struggles, but they didn't rack up in losses. They just meant he didn't get the ball as much the next game or whatnot, and he still had some big games. So our guy Carmelo, back in the league, he'll try to make a push in the bubble again. The Blazers have to get within 4, and then they get a 3-game playoff after that.
I mean, that would be a great story.
That would be an awesome story.
I mean, I don't want to say Melo led them, but if Melo had a really big part in making them, become a bubble playoff team, then
right.
I mean, not much else you can ask for.
And
really.
I don't think, and it's like I wrote in a couple of these mentions, it was never Melo is going to give you 25 and going to re-cement your team.
Not anymore.
You're in the playoffs. Melo's a starter. He's been there, and he hasn't been used crazy amount this season. Why can't he give you a crazy 25-point game that you really needed it, and that's an extra guy the other team has to worry about? I think that's where Portland sits with him. The Rocket Men, a year later, all 3 of these guys in really great spots. Matthew, we talked about the futures for each one of them. Dwight and Carmelo specifically are going to get the chance to my advice is stay for a veterans minimum. I think that helps you get to a good team and find a good spot and not
and these guys
be resented.
These guys all have money from their previous contracts.
Right.
I feel like something that's like unfair about all these guys, and I'm going to bring in LeBron here because I feel like in a way they're all associated with LeBron. Obviously, Chris Paul and Melo, the Banana Boat team. Melo drafted him the same year, and then Dwight and LeBron had some years where they're going back and forth. I feel like people subconsciously compare them to LeBron. They're like, LeBron's still at the top of his game, and it's just like LeBron is not human. Okay, I don't know where he's from. I'm not sure if he's from Krypton or something, but like, this dude is not human. And these guys, most people aren't still the best player in the league at 35, 34.
Yeah,
LeBron is. So I think if you can push that aside mentally and look at these guys, and I mean, they're all up lower 30s. I mean, they're putting up great numbers, all of them, for what they are. Specifically, Chris Paul, I think he's having an insane season. But besides the point, for where they're at in their careers, they're doing great. I mean, you can't complain. If you're the GM or the coach and you're looking at it and you're like, I got Chris Paul, Dwight Howard, and Melo, you're feeling good. Yeah,
great point. Chris Paul, would be in year 16, Melo in year 17. Like, this is it's been a crazy ride for all these guys. Howard, he's the same draft as Paul, so year 16 too for him. That's a crazy thought. The bubble, obviously very exciting. We marked kind of where all these 3 teams sit here on the Glory Road podcast. We're going to have more coming up. I know we'll have a guest, actually a bit of a TikTok guy, hitting over 100K. He'll be joining me, Nick Knows, to be discussing the Sixers. So he and I will be talking about where the Sixers stand and the book that just came out about the process. Very interesting stuff. Remember to subscribe on YouTube, subscribe on Spotify. And again, Matthew, thanks for checking in. And
Appreciate it.
We were right.
Yeah, we were.
These three guys, they not we talked about their careers, but they got somewhere to sit in this league, and they found their spots.
And they still have some potential future value as well.
Cheers to the Rocket, man.
Yes, sir.